Good morning, and welcome to the Dr. Kennedy podcast. The Dr. Kennedy podcast is sponsored by the Daniels Foundation for Impact Investment and Development. And boy, guys, tell you what, we have an interesting morning this morning. We have Baruti Kafele, Principal Kafele, who is one of the most highly regarded speakers in the country on education. He's a native of East Orange, a graduate of East Orange High School, and an established author, international speaker, and just very proud of him. He's a graduate of King University, and he's won several awards. He's been inducted to the Alliance of Black Schools Education Hall of Fame. He's been inducted to the East Orange Hall of Fame. And we just really want to pick his brain on a lot of subjects. We only have an hour with him. Probably could do 2 hours with him because he really is a prolific guy in terms of school management, school diversity, social policy, a lot of things that he's really been influential on in terms of influencing today's society. And that's why he's so highly well regarded, and we're lucky to have him. And I want to thank you, Principal Kafele, for taking the time to share with us his time today. And I'm not doing justice in terms of his introduction because he really is just a outstanding person. He's married to Kimberly. He's a father of 3 children, Baruti, Jabari, and Kabira. Again, just a fantastic guy. And again, we just have so much talent from East Orange. And I'm just picking a barrel here, because this is not really an East Orange-centric podcast, but I'm just going to the well of what's close to me. I'm not even tempting to go outside my wheelhouse yet. I'm just going to guys that are from my neighborhood. Talked to Kim Macklin. Now we're talking to Baruti here. And guys, just sit back and enjoy. We have an hour, action-packed. Baruti Kafele, sit back, get the eggnog. Notice I have the East Orange hat on. And just enjoy. And again, please support at the Daniels Foundation for Impact and Development. You can get that at the website. We could really use some donations. That is daniels-foundation.org. That's daniels-foundation.org. That's also going to be posted on this interview on the introduction as we posted on the website for the foundation and on Facebook and on the YouTube channel. So thank you very much. Please support and appreciate you very much. 3. Good afternoon, guys. And guess what? I have Principal Kafele, Baruti Kafele, a native of East Orange. Now, I'm so proud to have him here. And welcome him. Baruti, how you doing?
I'm good. As I always say, I'm on fire. I'm ready to have another productive day, ready to make it happen to the best of my ability.
Okay, great. Well, why don't you say hello to the audience for a second, give you a chance to introduce yourself or anything that's on your mind just before we jump into the heavy stuff. Say hello, or, just let folks know what you've been up to lately, or, just say hello to some friends of yours.
Yeah, it's good to talk to a native East Oranger. That's home for me. I wasn't born in East Orange. I was born in Orange, but I tend to tell people I was born and raised in East Orange because I was raised in East Orange. And, it's just good to be here. As much as I travel and just meet people from all over the place, I always let folks know I'm just a kid from East Orange. I wear East Orange on my sleeve. It's home. I am East Orange. Sometimes I think about moving back there and running for mayor or something. I wouldn't, but I was a principal there, and I thought I was going to be a superintendent there, but I decided to go on and do my thing. And we get into that with the questions, but East Orange is what it's about for me.
Fantastic. I want to thank you for agreeing to do this, and all this supported by the Daniels Foundation. You guys get a chance, go out, take a look at the daniels-foundation.org. So let's go ahead and jump in. I'm really impressed with what you've done, and I can't even put my arms around all of it. Like I was telling you earlier, we need 2 hours, but we'll take the hour. We appreciate you. So, thanks for agreeing to do the interview. And
yes, sir.
Talk a little about your background and your formal education. How you kind of got your training.
Yeah, I coming up in East Orange, one of the things that happened to me is that I grew up on the south side of town, went to Elmwood, and then moved up to Mount Avenue in East Orange and went to Nassau, and then moved on the north side, went to Columbia, and then ultimately Rutledge. So I was always a good student, but somewhere between, say, 7th and 8th grade, the wheels started falling off, and we moved back to the south side as my mom got divorced from my stepfather. And I moved back on the South Side and just kind of became infatuated with the streets of the South Side and lost focus. So East Orange High School, the local high school, wasn't going to be the place for me. So my mom put me in Montclair Immaculate, and they tossed me out of there by December. So then she enrolled me in East Orange High, but I never showed up. So then she said, go live with your father. So I went to Hillside High and did nothing. He said, go back to your mother. So then we moved to Woodbridge, and I wound up going to Woodbridge High School for 3 years and did a 5-year plan in high school. So 5 years of high school, graduating with a 1.5 GPA. And then after that, doing nothing for the next 5 years, enrolled in Middlesex County College, but only in the student center with my guys, and staying there for 5 years and never having graduated or taking many courses. And then went on to Kane, and a switch was flipped, and I graduated from there summa cum laude after doing 2 years of the 4-year school. And I haven't looked back. That was in '86 when I graduated, and haven't looked back.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's an inspiring story for a lot of folks. A lot of folks can identify with that. So
Yeah.
along those lines, during your formative years, who's some events or people that had an impact in your life? What kind of, as you said, what was long that flipped the switch that kind of, it's got to be an event or some people.
Yeah, absolutely. The only reason I went to Kane or college, period, was because my friends in East Orange were graduating from college. And here I was, I'm living in a 2-bedroom apartment with my mother with no employment. And I'm looking at them graduating, getting ready to start their adult lives. So I said, I need to go to college. I need to do something. I don't know what to study. I have no ambition, no desire, no nothing. Just, I need to do something. So I said to my mother, I said, I'm gonna make your dream come true. I'm going to school. But what should if I get in, what should I study? And she said, study marketing. And I said, well, what's that? And she explained to the best of her ability. And I went on and studied marketing. But when I got there, the first day in September of 1984, I decided to go to the library because I figured that's where the smart people hang out, and I needed to find a new circle. So I went to the library, walked up and down the aisles where the books were. I had never read a book in my life from cover to cover. And I'm walking up and down the aisles, and there's a book that's just partially protruding on the shelf. So because it was partially protruding, I said, let me pull that off the shelf, and maybe that'll be my book. I didn't know what section of the library I was in. It wasn't relevant. The book was called To Kill a Black Man, and it was written by an author by the name of Lewis Lomax. And it was a book about the parallels between Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. What I knew about Dr. King at that time, I was 23. I could give you maybe 2 solid sentences. And for Malcolm, I could give you 1 distorted sentence, right? So I knew nothing about him. I sit down, I read this, the first page, and I'm intrigued because based on the title, I didn't think the book was going to be about these 2 men. I thought it was going to be about urban violence. But after the first page, I'm intrigued. I read another page, I'm intrigued. I read another page and another page and another page. And I said, man, let me go to class and get back in and read more of this book. So as I'm turning each page, I'm transforming, I'm changing, I'm shifting. So then ultimately, I finished the book, and I want to read the autobiography of Malcolm X. Called one of my guys in East Orange. His name is Robert Patrick. He's known as Yogi. And I said, look, man, I seen that autobiography of Malcolm X in your bedroom, on your bookcase like 1,000,000 times. Let me borrow that book. He laughed at me. He said, you know you don't read. I said, no, let me that book. He gave it to me. It took me about a week while I was a student at Kane. And I read the entire 500-page book in about a week. And from that point on, I'm a new guy. I developed this voracious appetite in just reading everything African-American. So I became this walking encyclopedia, just knowing a lot of things about the history, because I'm reading hundreds of books throughout the course of a very short period of time, while maintaining a 4.0 at Kane. Because by reading those books, what it did, as I'm sure you know, it reintroduced myself to myself. So I didn't know who I was historically. I didn't know who I was culturally. And hence, the problems I had for the previous 10 years. But now that I've been reintroduced to me by way of who I am in the collective sense, historically, culturally, then in my mind, I can do anything because I'm of an ancestry that has done anything, right? So now I'm saying, wow, this little academic work I'm doing now, this is no problem. I'll get through this. Let me study what I gotta study so I can get back to reading what I need to read. And that's, you know, that's my formative years in terms of where I am now as an educator.
Wow, that's really powerful. Let's build that because you have such a fabulous career that I would like to go into some other things, but I can't waste the time because you know management, things about social justice and the attitude gap. So it's really we got to cover this stuff. So hopefully you'll I apologize for not going into more of the personal social, but
No,
about
that's
your
good.
mind here, we gotta tackle the mind here, and
Yeah,
I think I got a mind, so let's go mind to mind.
yeah, 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 definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about just education in general in terms of your philosophy, because you've done a lot in terms of you know bridging the attitude gap. So maybe talk about what spurred you that you felt that attitude needed to be addressed first of all, and that it
Yeah,
was effective, and you kind of been writing books along all these lines as a strategy.
yeah, yeah. I go to Brooklyn, New York City to become a teacher in 1988 after graduating in 86 and trying corporate America. And when I walked into that school, it was interesting for me, and it couldn't have been, I couldn't have had a better life script, because I walk into the school because of all that I had read previously. All I want to do is teach. I know now I want to teach, but I don't know anything about teaching. I know nothing. The only thing I know is marketing from a textbook vantage point and African American history. That's all I know. This is an empty vessel here. So when I walk into that classroom in 1988, all I can give those students is the limited information that I have outside of a curriculum. So in my mind, okay, let me take math and infuse African American history into it. Let me take science and infuse African American history into it. Social studies, obviously, language arts with reading and writing and speaking. And so now I become this culturally relevant, culturally responsive teacher, but there's no language for that yet back in those days. That's something that came about years later. So I'm doing this thing which just seemed natural to me. It wasn't something that was taught to me. So it got me into trouble from time to time because administrators and colleagues didn't understand what it was I was doing, but the children were achieving at high levels. And people ask the question, how is that? How? You're new and so forth. How are they achieving at such high levels? I said, because I'm putting them on the pages. I'm putting them in the lesson. These are Black children, first in Brooklyn and then back over in the East Orange. So I'm putting them on the page. I'm putting them in the lesson. They see themselves in what they're learning. They see themselves in mathematics. They see themselves in science, etc. So what's happening is the attitude is shifting. So I started to zero in on that. I said, it's not so much that I'm this great teacher. It's that I've got this focus on attitude and thereby attitude transformation. So as time went on, and here I am, I'm back in East Orange. I'm in 92, 93 school year. And then by 96, they make me the teacher of the year for Ashland School, then the East Orange School District Teacher of the Year, then the Essex County Teacher of the Year, and then finalist for New Jersey State Teacher of the Year. So a lot of questions like, how, you still young, you still new, how is this happening? And I said, very simple. I said, while everybody's trying to raise test scores, these increments of 5 percentage points here, 10 here, I said, I'm focused on their attitude. I want them to change permanently. I want them to understand who they are and what their roles are in life. So my focus was not on closing the achievement gap as many of us are. I said, my focus is on closing the attitude gap. And I'm defining that as the gap between those students who have the will to achieve excellence and those who do not the skill, not the ability, but the will, because youngster can be born into some very abject situations. Youngster can be, the hand that was dealt at birth could be overwhelming. However, it doesn't take away from that youngster's capacity nor potential. That youngster can still be just as brilliant as the one with the most privilege ever imagined, but he's born into a tough situation. But I don't have to replicate that in my classroom. I can create an oasis in the classroom where that youngster can check that situation at the door, and I can instill hope and possibility into that youngster by way of zeroing in on the attitude. And that was my approach as a teacher. That was my approach as a principal, and that continues to be my approach as a consultant.
Okay, well, that's fascinating. So, in your answer, you talked about some of these awards. I want the audience to know what we have in front of us. So, can you talk about, inducted into the East Orange Hall of Fame, a lot
That
of
was big.
education awards. Can you list maybe maybe list your top 3 awards that you're proud of and what that means to you, and what that instills in terms of maybe for some future work?
Yeah, that East Orange Hall of Fame is head and shoulders above everything else.
Okay.
Um, that matters.
Hmm.
I don't know what awards I will achieve going forward,
Hmm.
but nothing will equate to that when your home city
Yeah.
says that we want to recognize and honor you. And this was the inaugural Hall of Fame banquet. This was the first one, so
Well, that's
it's
special.
huge.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and then the other two would be first, the what's called the Milken Award. And that's an award that you don't apply for any of these awards, but this one is kind of different because it's, you probably heard of Michael Milken,
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
the billionaire,
Yep.
and well, his brother created the Milken Educator Awards, Lowell Milken. And what they've been doing since Michael Milken has been philanthropic over the years, since the time that he had been convicted.
Hmm.
He's been going around the country giving these educator awards. They do all this extensive research to find people in all 50 states who are doing, as they would say, phenomenal work. And then they reach out to the commissioner of education, the governor of that particular state, its superintendents and principals, and they collaborate on or dialogue on who are these great educators. And somehow, some way, they found me when I was at North Tech in 2009. So what they do is a surprise assembly. The media is there, the commissioner is there, the governor is typically there, and just a lot of dignitaries. And then your whole school is there, your student body and staff.
Right.
So they tell you that it's going to be something else. So my soup came to me one day and said, we're going to have this surprise, not surprise, we're going to have this assembly, and the commissioner of ed is going to address the school. Can you get your students ready? So long story short, I did. But the thing is, when he said get your students ready, because of my DNA, the way I'm wired, I was insulted by it, because yeah, for me, I don't feel like I need to get them ready for anything. They're gonna be ready, right?
Mhm.
So he said get them ready. Make sure that they're right, all that type of thing. So I was so mad. Never forget it. It was in November, late November 2009. I brought them to the auditorium and I went off. I stood at half court, my entire school in the gym, and I went off. I told him, I said, man, the superintendent told me to get y'all ready for a program. Now, I'm unorthodox. Most people are not going to do that. I get you fired, right? I said, superintendent said to get y'all ready. I said, are you kidding me? I said, I don't have to get y'all ready because y'all are ready. They start clapping.
Yeah.
I said, so but we got this assembly. Let them see the best that Newark has to offer. That's all I'm asking you, right? I said, do this favor for me, because I'm so mad now. I could feel it's like as if it was today. I said, see, I had a program at the school called Power Monday. That meant that we focused on our guys. We had them in shirt and tie, slack shoes, and a belt, and we were teaching them what it is to be a man. And then we had Power on Mondays, and then we had Power Monday for the young women. So it was a young men's empowerment program, and then we had the young women's empowerment program, and we would extract a grade level from the larger population, and they'd be with me and guest speakers like yourself. I would bring in for about 4 hours on a Monday morning. right? So we were literally talking manhood. We were talking about being leaders, etc. And we were just instilling a lot of things in them. So I said to them, I said, look here, this program is going to be on Tuesday. I said, I need y'all to do me a favor because the TV cameras are going to be here. I want them to see the best. I said, I want to obliterate every stereotype that they have of Newark. I said, wear your Power Monday clothes for me. Just do me that favor. I can't make them wear it. I can't even make them wear that on Power Monday, let alone a Tuesday. That's believing in your principle. That's all that is. So they said, we with you. We'll be dressed Tuesday. So now I said, now when the dignitaries get in there, if you see me frown, right? Just watch me before the program starts. I said, if you see me frown, that means somebody has walked up on me and said, why are your kids dressed and sitting orderly, right? I told them that. I said that, and if you see me frown, that means I'm mad, right? And then they kept seeing me frown because the dignitaries, I'm not gonna name none of them, they were walking up on me, hey, Kafele, man, what's up with your kids, man? I said, what do you mean? I knew what they meant. Like, look how they sitting. They're like quiet, they're orderly. The program hasn't even started yet. They dressed up in like business attire. What is that? I said, when you get a chance, go over there and ask them, right? So I'm mad now. So now the program starts. I'm getting to that award now. So now here come Lowell Milken, Michael Milken's brother, talking about whatever. And then the commissioner gets up there talking about whatever. So then finally they say, we're going to recognize an educator with a check for $25,000 in the educator's name because this educator's phenomenal, doing big things for education, doing big things for children. Now I'm mad-er. You go on YouTube, you'll see me sitting on the dais and I'm looking like I can't wait till this is over, right? To get my kids back, because now I'm mad because I'm saying you're going to give 25 grand to one of my teachers and nobody told me, the principal, you giving one of my teachers that much money and I'm left in the dark. I'm sitting there, watch the video on YouTube. Okay. Kafele Milken Award. That's all you got to write in there. And I'm sitting there like,
yeah.
And then Lowell Milken said, and the person we gonna recognize is Principal Kafele. I went like this. Right. And then I put my head down and started praying. That's what this picture is.
I right? See it. I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because once it hit me, I just went and I started praying and meditating. My kids were standing ovation the entire school.
Wow.
And that was just big. I gave most of the money to them, scholarships. I took them to Six Flags, all sorts of stuff. And but it was just a big deal. And then the last one was when the National Alliance of Black School Educators, called NABC, when they recognized me with their Hall of Fame award. Those are the big three for me.
Okay, wow, that's special. That's a hell of a career moment. Congratulations. I don't have nothing like that. That must you can take that one to your grave. That's
yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So let's talk about it. So you said you went to Columbia School. My father was a principal of Columbia School, and he was a turnaround specialist.
Oh, he was a Columbia.
My father was one of the first Black principals in the state of New Jersey, and Henry Daniels, and he integrated New Brunswick professionally as a principal, and he integrated Montclair at the Rand School back in 1965. So early 60s. We talk about none of us in professional management. He was a pioneer. And then after he did, his cut his teeth in terms of integrating, essentially New Jersey professional principalship, he came to East Orange and went to Columbia School. I don't know if he was there when you were there, but he was a turnaround specialist because back then, as you know, that was on the border of East Orange and Newark, down in the Ampere section.
Yeah.
And he kind of turned schools around, which is one of the things that you do. So my question is, when you go into a situation like that, I know my father's disposition. He was charismatic. He was unorthodox. He loved authority speeches that meant something. They were authentic. Mm-hmm. And so he reached the kids and staff to become empowered. So can you talk about maybe empowerment, turn things around, and what's the magic sauce?
Yeah, it's that's a whole 6-hour workshop because that's what I do for a living. Yeah. As far as that question, but I'll say this. I think about when you talk about school turnaround, I think about every minute of the day, beginning with before the school even opens for instruction and learning. So I train principals all over the country. And when I'm at a school, not on a professional learning day, but on a consulting day, when I get to shadow the principal, I get there early because I want to see, before the students arrive and staff, I want to see what this person does, right? Because we're talking about school turnaround. So how do you spend your time? And I don't ask the question. I'm just going to sit back and watch. How do you spend your time before they get there? So for me, how I spent my time before they got there was I literally walked into every classroom in the building, because although there may be issues outside, I want this oasis inside. Maybe I may be in a building that's just so old, 100 years old, but it doesn't have to look that way inside. So when you walk into a classroom, it is immaculately clean. It's ready. It smells good. It's sparkling. It's ready for young people. So I want to see, is there an inspection by that principal to make sure that these kids are not going into some dirty, nasty learning environment? Like, what does that look like? I'm even looking at the chalkboard, back in them days, it wouldn't be now, but at the chalkboard to see that if is that fresh, or is that just erased from yesterday or days, and now they coming into it's this nasty chalkboard, because that speaks volumes. So I'm putting my finger on the windowsill to see if there's any dust, right? I mean, those are the things I'm doing. But then after that, then I'm going outside, and no student is walking into that building without shaking my hand. Or my young ladies love to hug. I know I'm not supposed to do that, but I'm out there in the open. They come up and hug me. I turn to the side and hug them back, because that might be the only hug that they're getting from somebody, an adult male anyway, that they respect. So there's a greeting. There's a good morning, that I'm glad to see you, that type of thing, before they walk into the building. So people ask, okay, but what does that do? How's that turning the school around? I said, because before you can turn a school around, there's this word called culture, and there's this other word called climate. And if the climate and the culture are not conducive to, going back to that definition of attitude gap, conducive to young people having the willingness to strive, the willingness to soar, then it's not going to happen. They got to have the will. We all have to have the will to do anything that we do in life. If the will is not there, it's probably not going to get done. So now I'm saying I got to start establishing culture before they even walk into the building. So when their leader, their principal, is out there to greet them with a smile and welcome them and let them know that he's glad or she's glad to see them, that speaks volumes about what's happening in the building. Because there are schools where the young people don't even know the principal or know who the principal is, right? So I don't want to be that guy. I said, I want to be a part of their lives. So I'm out there doing that. Last piece, in terms of before even instruction and learning even start, is, you have a sports background. So you rescue me on this if I'm wrong. One of the things that I learned, and I have the same background, mine developed in Woodbridge. But here I'm saying, in the world of sports, a team walks into a locker room, I don't care what the sport is, on game day. They put on the uniform. Here's what they don't do. They don't put on the uniform and now walk out onto the court and wait for the game to begin, or walk out onto the field and wait for the game to begin. On game day, they put on the uniform, and now the head coach has something to say. It doesn't necessarily have to be a charismatic speech. It could be instructions. It could be a reminder, but that head coach is not going to allow that team to just walk out because the uniform's on and I haven't said anything to them. So in my mind, I said, as a principal, I'm the head coach. How am I going to let these students go to class? Class begins, and I didn't say anything to my team, meaning my school, to just lay the foundation, set a tone, fire them up one more time, and now we're ready to learn. So therefore, what I did, After they were in the building and in their homerooms, now we have morning announcements. That's led by young people. But once those announcements are done that they do, now one of my team, my student team was saying, now we'll have words from our leader, Principal Kafele. And I'm coming on there for 2 minutes and I'm going to give it everything I've got. I mean, I worked this thing harder than I would a keynote address where they're paying me $10,000, right? I'm going to give it everything I've got for those 2 minutes to lay a foundation, to set a tone for learning, and then I'll do it again tomorrow morning. So 180 days, I'm on that PA system, or I'm doing an in-person morning convocation where we're in the gym together or the auditorium, and just giving them my soul. And that, because see, if like with anything in life, if there's no foundation, you can't build a house without a foundation, or structure anything without a foundation. That Golden Gate Bridge behind you, way down underneath that water, is a foundation. So everything in life has to have a foundation. So learning has to have one too, every day. So I made sure that foundation is in place, and that's something I teach principals all over the country, because I go into school.
We could talk for an hour just on that.
Because there's a lot there.
But you're right. I can think of some of my best games when I was inspired by my coach, fired me up, said something that we're disrespected, get out there, kind of get your respect back, and you kind of go out a little harder. So yeah, that's interesting strategy, in terms of grabbing the mic and setting the tone. So let's talk about that tone for the general population and this Black Lives Matters movement.
Yeah.
You've spoken on social justice. You've spoken on social justice classes, which I never even thought about it in that context, because as you know, there's a movement, and then of course we always had in terms of HBCUs, in terms of Black history, and the Black college classes and things like that on white campuses. Let's start with just a general topic of what that means to you in terms of where we are now, where we're going, what should happen, and then maybe I'll pipe in with something else. I have some viewpoints on also.
Yeah, social justice education is such an interesting concept. Here we are in the midst of a pandemic, and then on May 25th, 2020, this year, we're introduced to a man by the name of George Floyd. I don't, I tell people all the time, I don't think I've ever met George Floyd, but I speak in Minneapolis, not frequently, but I've been there quite a few times to speak. Who knows? Maybe he could have been in one of my audiences, because I did a lot of night programs, not just professional development. But be that as it may, we're introduced to George Floyd by way of an 8-minute and 46-second murder by a Minneapolis police officer with his knee on his neck. And that changed everything. That changed the world, because finally, we, as an African American community, we have been crying out about police brutality, racism, systemic racism for centuries, literally. But a lot of people weren't hearing us, and we're crying out, and people don't hear us. Like, you guys are living in the past. This thing is not happening. It's a new day, whatever. And then they get to see it on video. See the police shootings. People made people who were not empathetic to our cause made excuses for that. Well, he shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z, whatever. But this video, this showed, and I don't care if it was in 3rd degree, then 2nd degree. As far as I'm concerned, and I'm not a legal scholar, this is 1st degree, right? Because if your knee is on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that means that from that 1st second on, you plan this. Right, you plan to kill him, because you know that that's equivalent to a chokehold. It's asphyxiation. So I'm saying here, I'm watching this. Then I'm watching the outrage. I'm watching the demonstrations, the protests, the marches, the rallies, the rebellions, the rioting. And I said, this has school implications. Mm-hmm. No mistake about it. Because for me, and again, I'm talking about my DNA, there's no such thing as the classroom here in the world over there. And if those educators who see it that way, is here's the classroom, there's the world, then you're doing young people a disservice from the outset, because the classroom and the world have to be one and the same. Not we're in school, we're in class getting you ready for this. No, we in this. right? You ain't getting me ready for this. We're in this. So now, my perspective becomes, so let's enhance each day as we're already in the world. We are of the world. So now I'm saying social justice education. That's not some add-on. That now let's infuse this into what we do. Social justice education has to be inherent in the education. So again, going back, my blessing was I didn't know better for that not to be the case, right? That was normal for me. It's just like it's normal to open up this bottle of water and drink from it. Well, it was normal for me to be a social justice educator because I didn't know better, right? So now here's what I'm saying. It's easy for me to be a social justice educator because of my educational background, but it's not easy for everybody. See, you got people out here. Take, for example, I get to work with a lot of suburban teachers, whether it be teachers who were my colleagues as a teacher in East Orange, teachers who were on my staff in East Orange and Newark, or teachers that I work with in the field. And in interacting with them is a whole lot of folks out here who are very, very well intentioned as it relates to what they want to achieve with the young people. But here's the problem. There's a huge disconnect. Instead of this, it's this, right? And what I mean by that is like I'll ask the question when I'm doing seminars and so forth. Hey, teacher, when I'm working with small groups, because when I'm working with a larger group, this could be a hostile question. So I don't want to create that kind of hostility. So with smaller groups, I'll say, teachers, talk to me about your intimate familiarity with Black people prior to becoming a teacher of Black children, right? That's a game-changing question. That's a question I have to beg for an answer. A lot of, and the best time for me to ask those questions, because anywhere from 80 to 85% of teachers are white, and predominantly white women. So you got a lot of white women who have never been in a space with Black boys in particular, like Black boys and girls, but in this case, I want to focus on boys who have never been in a space with them. So their familiarity with Black boys is through media, through pop culture, through their favorite rap artists, right? And the lyrics that he may be spewing in that song, right? So, or sports, or that they watch on television, whatever the case may be. But in terms of being able to interact with and get to know that African American, and what is life for you? What are your experiences? What are your realities, your needs, your interests, your goals, your aspirations, your challenges, your obstacles? I may not have that understanding. So now I walk into a classroom and I got a classroom full of third grade Black children, or fifth grade Black children, or ninth grade, whatever it is. I don't know them. I don't know anything about them. Right? All I know is what I got through pop culture because I lived in my bubble, right? And when the NBA went into that bubble, it gave that word bubble a whole new definition for me as an educator, because we use that word bubble loosely, right? But when they lived in this little space in Orlando for a long period of time and kept a disease out. I mean, that's amazing. That virus never got in there. And you and I, all of us thought it was going to get in there. It never got in there because they were in this bubble. And so when I looked at that through my educator lens, I said, there it is. There are teachers, there are educators in the same bubble, and ain't nobody getting in there, right? So now I'm in my bubble, I'm in my world, and I'm good with this. But now I want to teach, and they pay a little bit more money in the urban environment. Or maybe I want to teach and I just want to be in that urban environment because I think I got something to offer. Okay, so now I step out of my bubble and I go into this world that I don't know. And now I'm trying to be this superstar teacher, but I don't know the youngsters who are the recipients of what I'm giving them. And therefore there's this disconnect. So when you tie that to social justice, think about it. unless I've stepped out of my bubble for a long period of time, I'm not even in position to infuse social justice into curriculum because I don't know what that is as it relates to the children that are sitting in my classroom. That's a different world for me. It's foreign. So when I have that conversation with teachers in small groups and talk to me about your intimate familiarity with Black people before you became a teacher of Black children, man, that's an uncomfortable question.
Right.
It's good discomfort because I want to create discomfort because discomfort can bring about change. But it's a question that makes one really look deep within themselves as to, wow, I have a lot to learn. And then I start recommending different readings, different websites, different books, because I said, you got to develop. You got to have that familiarity with the population that you're servicing or there, or else what usage are you to them?
Right.
It's critical.
Interesting. Let's keep building on that. So, the Black Lives Matters movement is kind of, it's tackled, police reform. What do you think should happen next in terms of whether it be economics, politics? We kind of already talked a little about social justice here, but what about economic? Will you put your economic hat on in terms of, let me pose it a little deeper because later on we're going to have a Professor Barry Hendricks, who also from East Orange. I don't know if you're familiar with his name.
Oh, yeah.
And he's kind of advocating a maybe that capitalism is not the vehicle. Maybe we need to go to socialism or something with socialist bent. Can you think about that in terms of what might that mean for education? How would that work? What's your thinking on that? Because you kind of have thought about these things.
Yeah. See, for me, Malcolm said history is best qualified to reward our research, right? And I'll take that to my grave with me. Two examples. Number one, Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey comes to America, and he's probably 100 years ahead of his time when he was here, coming out of St. Anne's Bay, Jamaica. And he builds this self-sufficient economic movement that was not confined to New York City, but it wasn't confined to America, but it was worldwide. I tell the viewers, read Tony Martin's book, Race First, in terms of just how far reaching, how vast the Marcus Garvey movement was and what he was trying to create. Because a lot of people that don't know Garvey think that the Garvey program was all about back to Africa. That's like so secondary, right? In terms of what he was building here and the template he created for the Nation of Islam later on. But so you look at that and then you juxtapose that with Black Wall Street. A lot of times when we look at Black Wall Street, we focus on the massacre, which is miscalled the race riot. It wasn't a race riot. Race riot is two groups of people fighting each other. This was a massacre, right? So burned a whole city, a whole section of the city, Greenwood, to the ground. But the emphasis shouldn't be solely on the massacre. The emphasis should be on all those years prior to the massacre and why that jealousy and hatred to want to burn it down. Because you're talking about a city in a section of Tulsa where the dollar never had to leave because everything that they needed was in the city. You got grocery stores, you got banks, you got dry cleaners. You got the post office there, but you got schools there. But you just got business after business after business, and that dollar never had to go outside of the community because their needs were being met within the community. That hasn't been replicated too many times between Garvey and between Black Wall Street. Now, Black Wall Street wasn't the only Black Wall Street. There are other models, but they weren't as vast as the one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I'm saying that to say this, and then you got Kwanzaa coming in a few days, and you think about the fourth principle, Ujamaa, cooperative economics, right? So between Ujamaa, Black Wall Street, Marcus Garvey, and then of course there are many other examples, but these are like my big three here. It's doable if culturally we develop a mindset of supporting one another, right? But as long as that's not there, and we're so apt to take the dollar and spend it outside. So with schools and with you having that business mindset, And what we were doing with the young men's and young women's empowerment program, those seeds of entrepreneurship have to be planted.
That's right.
Because as long as we're not talking entrepreneurship, then that dollar is always going to leave, right? But when we're talking entrepreneurship, so that was an inherent part of what I did as an educator. Talking entrepreneurship, getting young people thinking about going into business for themselves. And that's probably what made it so easy for me to transition into business for myself, because I was preaching it so much. So I guess preaching it to them, I was preaching it to myself, and made that happen. But it's the same thing with our community. You know, we gotta start when they're children and start getting them thinking about business, about big business, thinking big, and believing in their ability to be a part of that economic growth within the communities upon which they live. But that's got to be taught. And see, going back to that teacher that's in that bubble, if that teacher doesn't understand that, because see, I can't frown on white teachers being in schools with black children, because it's a reality. Black men are only 1.2% of the total US teaching force. So I can't go in and grab a bunch of black men to come into the school and say, look, you look like me. Let's have these conversations. They're not there. So I got to work with what's there. Right. So even that's got to be taught to that teacher about economic development within black and brown communities, and what are the things that have to be put in place, because that teacher ultimately has to be a part of that conversation as well.
Interesting. Fascinating. There's so much to do, and now's the time to do. We have this window, as you're saying, it's been opened by the George Floyd. So let's build on that in terms of, let's first do, we can talk about business innovation, but let's go to your wheelhouse, educational innovation in terms of institutional type. And as you know, this has been, and since you're educated, I want to do it in terms of first, in terms of the easy ones are like charter schools, public school, charter school debate. That's easy for you. But then let's go even further. Have you thought about school financing? And maybe even further, what's the next big thing that we might see in terms of educational innovation and types of institutions that you might say is needed or is not being done?
Well, it's interesting. I read an article, I posted it on social media last night, in fact. Connecticut is the first state, I should say, in the country to require African American and Latino studies. Right? It's no other state has done this. New Jersey has a law called the Amistad, and it became law in 2002, but it had no teeth. There's nothing in it that requires implementation. The law says that all students ought to be exposed to African American, all students across racial ethnic groups ought to be exposed to African American history from grade kindergarten all the way to grade 12 through their social studies curriculum. So the law is in place, but there's nothing there that says it has to be done. So I know North got serious about it just recently, but in terms of the rest of the districts around the country, it's up to the individual teacher, it's up to the individual principal. So therefore, there's nothing there. Connecticut said, we're going to require this as a high school elective. That's a good start. I mean, I hope that as they grow it, that it trickles down into the elementary grades. But the reason I would bring it up in the context of your question is to say that, in just in terms of the way I look at education, that is absolutely vital. It is unavoidable. It is non-debatable, and it is who I am at my heart and soul as an educator, right? So because when we talk about doing the things that you're talking about through your questions, particularly with the finance part, first and foremost, Black children, as they're going through their maturation, as they're going through their growth, they have to recognize who they are historically, right? They can't see themselves historically as descendants of slaves, right? That can damage the psyche for your entire life if that's the way you're introduced to who you are historically and culturally. So I'm saying here, but when we can go back further, right, into Africa and work our way into the Middle Passage, and then go beyond that and talk about all the wins, all the victories, despite severe oppression, I'm saying that is absolutely vital, because you're talking about a whole lot of young people. In fact, you're talking about adults too, who are walking around and having no clue as to who they are historically speaking, and thereby not knowing their role along the continuum of life for a people. That's vital. So for me, in terms of school reform, school change as it relates to Black and brown children in schools, that piece that Connecticut did, that's right there at the core. I say to folks all the time, you can bring, in fact, these are some of the things that would get me into trouble from time to time, because I can't say that my career was smooth because I'm outspoken and I'm firm in my beliefs. Um, but you can bring, as I used to say to folks when I work, you could spend millions of dollars all you want on the various different programs, right? You can bring in the best math program that money can buy, the best reading and writing program money can buy, the best consultant that money can buy. You can bring all that stuff in. But at the end of the day, when that Black youngster looks into that mirror and doesn't recognize who that is looking back, yes, we will have individual breakthroughs, but I'm talking about the masses of the young people. And when the masses of the young people don't recognize who they are historically, we will be asking the same questions when I'm long gone. You and I are long gone, but 100 years from now, 200 years from now, what's wrong with Black children? Why is the achievement gap so wide? Right? You know, and of course, racism is the ultimate answer, right? But in terms of what we're going to do to combat it, right? Well, let's start with obliterating the best kept secret known to man, the secret of who are Black people in the eyes of Black people, right? Because it was removed during enslavement. You can't enslave a person if the person has understanding and knowledge of self. So you can put chains on, but you'll keep them enslaved ad infinitum once you put a chain around his mind. But as long as that chain is not around his mind, he'll figure out a way to free himself. And that's the difference.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, you know, earlier you kind of touched on some of your frustration with, you know, school administration, superintendents, stuff like that. And as we all know that there's some bureaucracy in education at the, you know, secondary and higher educational level. And let me talk about my own experience. Then let me see if there's something parallel in terms of secondary that, you know, it used to be that it was the growth of the administration. And I'm talking about, you know, it's kind of like the college broke down to professors and administrators. And the pool of administrators, even though our burden, pool of professors, even though our burden became greater and greater in terms of teaching, research, and service, we never got more professors. And then the administrative class just grew and grew and grew to almost become like it was dominant over the professor class per se. Is there something parallel like that in, you know, our educational system, that maybe the administrative burden is inefficient or not effective? It could be doing a better job, or somehow we could use those resources better.
Absolutely, there are parallels, because although, you know, it may appear that there are a lot of Black administrators, right? If you go to a conference, like a National Alliance of Black School Educators, and that's a Black conference, or a Black Educators Rock conference, and that's a Black conference, so you'll see a lot of Black administrators. But that's because we're all in this one space together. But when you start looking at national data in the national landscape, oh man, there's so many of us who are not in place. There's so many of us, there's this glass ceiling. So with the few, because in terms of teachers, black women are about between 6 to 7%, right? And then black men, like I said, 1.2%. But Black children are over 17%, right? In terms of the total population across the country, concentrated in your big cities and in the surrounding suburbs. So it's definitely conceivable that a Black child can go through K-12 and never experience a Black teacher in their lives. But the data says if I'm exposed to at least one Black teacher, and there's a higher probability that I will go to college, right? Just one out of those 13 years, including kindergarten. So yeah, there's definitely a parallel in terms of how far a Black administrator, and particularly a Black male, can go in education. You know, and again, obviously there are breakthroughs, but they're just not enough of us in these places. I mean, I get to see it with my own eyes when I'm on the road traveling.
Right.
You know,
Interesting. Yeah.
various audiences.
So let's piggyback some of your personal. I kind of focus so much on the professional just because it's necessary, you know.
Yeah.
So what are some of your hobbies? What do you do in your free time? You know, do you fish, golf? What's some of your late? Or I know you got the 3 kids. That's probably the answer.
Yeah. No, they
Personal
adults.
time.
But you know, my man, Coach Joe Jordan, used to always talk to me about golf. But
Yeah.
you know, yeah, but I've never done it outside of being on a resort and playing a little games with my wife, that type of thing. But you know what I do um in my spare, I'm a writer, you know, and when I say a writer, I'm using that word very loosely. I'm actually not a writer. I write a lot. That's a better way of phrasing it. I don't call myself a writer, but I do a lot of writing. And what I mean by that is I'm a practitioner. You know, a lot of times when I'm in a room with a speaker, for example, who's a professor, academia, we don't look at the world the same way. In terms of the education landscape, they see it through the lens of the professor, the research, that type of thing. I see it through the lens of walking in these shoes. So we're gonna look at it differently. So with them, I look at them as being writers. With me, I'm a practitioner with the audacity to take my thoughts and put them on paper. So I just finished my 12th book. For the past several years, I've been writing a book a year, but I made a decision to write short books, like not more than 100 pages or just a little over, because I write for educators, and I primarily write for principals, assistant principals, and aspiring principals. These are very busy people. I don't want to write a book this long, this difficult to read, this scholarly, and they need a thesaurus and trying to make sense of what I'm writing. I said, let me write these books that are short, they're so simplistic, but yet powerful, that this book will get me to right where I need to be. So I write I usually write them in the fall. So every fall I finish this one. Now we're going to go through the editing probably soon, and it'll be out in May. And all of my books come out in May, you know, because that's about the time it takes between the submission of the manuscript and then the editing process, which can be brutal. And then it's out there. So that's kind of what I do. And then my work kind of becomes my hobby because I really love my work. And outside of that, you know, I watch sports, you know, that's my thing. And lately, hang out with the wife, you know, because when I was on the road, I was on the road a lot. So, you know, sometimes I'm on the road for 4 weeks at a time. You know, you're doing 5 states in 5 days, you know, that type of thing. And it's wear and tear on your body. And you know, and I paid a heavy price. I had a heart attack May
Wow.
1st. May 1st, 2015,
Mhm.
on stage at the University of Miami. I was doing a keynote and my main artery clogged up on me 100%, and in the middle of the speech. But because I never had a heart attack before, I didn't know what I was experiencing. I knew it was excruciating. I knew I was in some kind of trouble, but I didn't know it was my heart. So I finished the speech. It was a 1 hour keynote, and it came in, I would say, about 30 minutes into the speech. And I finished the speech. They did a Q&A. And after there was a line of about 25 people. And after about the third question that I answered, I said to the audience, I said, I can't do it anymore. Something is going on with me and I feel like I'm dying. And they got an ambulance and rushed me to the hospital. And they said, we just saved you, you know,
You were a
and
trooper. Wow, that's amazing.
yeah, yeah. And type 2 diabetes came with it. And
Mhm.
I've lost a lot of weight. I was much bigger than this, and so lost a lot of weight, and got back out on the road doing that which I love. So I only stayed on my back for 9 days, and went right back out there, and that was my therapy, you know, because this is what I love to do.
Yeah, you're great at it, and you know, appreciate it. So let's talk a little about also those books. So for our audience sake, give maybe some background on maybe 2 or 3 of them that are must reads and why.
Yeah. You
No
know,
plug.
yeah, appreciate it. What is, you know, the newest one, the one I just wrote is you know, it's the title is the equity. Let me give you context. Every book I write these days has the number 50 next to it. And what it is
Oh,
every
yeah.
book every book I write is a book of 50 self-reflective questions. My intent is for the reader to read the book, but to read the self-reflective question with the commentary that accompanies it. I want them to look within themselves while they're reading. I don't just want them to read. So the book that will be coming out in May is called the Equity and Social the equity and social justice 50. So 50 questions tied into having an equity classroom and a social justice classroom. It'll be my first book for teachers in a while, because I've been writing for administrators. The Assistant Principal 50 is probably the hottest book I've ever written. This is my newest. It came out in May of 2020, so it's brand new. It's a bestseller. It's amassed over 10,000 copies in sales already, and this is in its third printing. It's just flying off well, I don't want to say the shelves because everybody buys it off the internet, but this is it, because there's a lot of assistant principals there's a lot of assistant principals in the world that I felt know nothing about preparation for principal leadership. And I decided I was going to take this thing on myself and teach assistant principals what it is they need to know in order to make the transition into principalship. So obviously I want the principals and superintendents to read it as well. So you may be aware that I do an assistant principal leadership academy every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern for free on Facebook Live, Twitter Live, and YouTube Live. And we got thousands of people watching these videos every week. So and I'm it's like it's worldwide now. It's people all over the world that tune in, and certainly all over the country, all time zones, that just tune in and get this information on being an effective an assistant principal. But then I'm saying, but assistant principal, you're going to be a principal one day. So the aspiring principal 50. So this is the book that accompanies it, and then ultimately you will be a principal. So the principal 50, and then I
you don't get a check
teacher 50. And then I threw this one together that had nothing to do with the 50, because I didn't write 50 questions. It was only 35. So is my school a better school?
That one I like. That one I read a little bit. I like that. That's a beautiful title, man. I appreciate
that. I mean, that's the title. When I do the PowerPoint, you don't even have to go through the slides, because there's enough content in the question.
Yes.
So there's, just to round it out, closing the attitude gap, and one more.
Yep.
Motivating Black males to achieve in school and in life. Now, I self-published years before I became a published author. And I wrote a book called A Black Parent's Handbook to Educating Your Children. Yep. And that book became an Essence magazine #1 bestseller. And that was me just being on the streets of New York City and Jersey, up in Harlem on 125th Street, out in the Bronx. I mean, not so much the Bronx, Brooklyn and Queens, just hustling this book on the street. And back in those days, you had Black bookstores. We're talking 90s now. You had Black bookstores all over America. So getting those books in every one of those stores, in essence, and eventually it outsold everybody. And that's just a kid from East Orange hustling a little $5 book. And it became an Essence bestseller, and it paid for the down payment of my house, and it paid for my master's degree. And that's part of my story. And then I wrote, self-published a few others, about 3 others. So I've written altogether these 12 books.
Fantastic. You remind me of Henry Louis Gates. I met him one time. He's a hustler. I don't know if you ever met him. Yeah. He's a hustler. He's doing the DNA thing.
Yep.
And that's a compliment. Because
I appreciate it. He's a good guy.
Because I'm kind of basically what you're talking about is grinding. That's kind of common word of guys that are super achievers. And I'll put you in the super achiever class. That constantly grinding, pretty much at it. Being a person we started. That's I really respect you. I got a lot to learn from you. So you're now my mentor in terms of trying to piggyback on. So hope you don't mind a stupid question from time to time.
Man, not a problem. Not a problem.
Basically, pretty much coming up to our end. We've been going at this for an hour, so I don't want to overgo my time that you allotted, because I'm thankful for that. So thank you for being a fabulous guest. But I want to take it out this way, because a common theme from what you've been talking about is, Black culture, knowing who we are, going back to Africa. So maybe, I'll give you the floor, take us out about what you think you see us going forward to the future as Black people, I guess ascending to our proper statue. What would your hopes and dreams be for us as people, and maybe for yourself as an individual, kind of taking us out?
Yeah. It's a good question, and just continuing to grow and evolve, and to not get caught up into the distractions. For me, I don't like to bash hip hop music, right? Especially I don't like to be on record doing it. But I gotta be honest. there's some artists and some some lyrics that are killing our kids. You could because see there, and the reason I don't like to bash it because there's a lot of good hip hop out here. It's just that that's the hip hop that doesn't get the airplay. The one that gets the airplay. There's you know, as youngsters, we all gravitate to certain heroes, certain role models, you know, that type of thing. And I had my artists, I had my athletes that I looked up to, but I'm looking at artists now and how they present themselves and the lyrics, and I'm saying, man, that person that I'm watching right now, because I study hip hop, because I'm an educator, I got to study it, I got to stay on top of it, and I say, man, this artist, millions of young impressionable black, and I'm gonna focus on the boys for a second, millions of impressionable black boys love this person, and this person, this artist, is not going to be here for very long, right? Because they don't last unless your name is like Jay-Z or somebody. You're not going to have that kind of longevity. You got your hot album right now, and next year this time ain't nobody talking about you, but that kid gravitated to you. And during that time you were hot, that kid liked you, admired you, and picked up on your style and picked up on your mannerisms. And now that kid might not have a father in his life to balance that, right? To counterbalance it. And now this is who that kid has become. And it doesn't have to be that way. So I'm using that as one distraction, because there are a lot of distractions, but I want us to be in a position where we can overcome whatever the distractions are that we're confronted by. You know, I was distracted, and grow as a people and take up our rightful place on this planet. Mm-hmm. As Dr. Karenga would say, a free, proud, and productive people. You know, that's essential. You know, but there's a heck of a lot of work to do, and that's why I stay in education right now.
Well, Principal Kafele, I want to say thank you. I'm on the mission with you. Hope
Yes,
we'll cross paths in the future, meet you in person, but it's been an honor. And
what?
I'm not worthy, but I'm gracious. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you on the other side. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.